rocket cars.
the what are they, like the Furious 7-2 instead of the Hateful Eight?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
just completely ripping it off. All right, we need to have
Sorry.
Super Reuben. Buy that now. All right, hello everybody. Doing it again. This is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly show where we go in depth with computing and different aspects. There's a lot of news that's come out today and over this last week. We're not going to be talking about Apple today, though. We're talking about what happened with PlayStation, with their big PlayStation meeting that happened today, and some of the news that's coming out with this. There's been speculation for a while about what the new PlayStations were going to look like, and now we have a much better idea of what that's going to be, when they're going to come out. We're going to get in depth with that. We're going to talk about some of the new technology that's in there, how they've doubled the graphics, where it looks like this is going for PlayStation, how this compares to PC gaming. The bottom line is we want you to let us know what your questions are. And if you have something that you want to talk about or you want to comment on, feel free to drop in there and let us know what that is. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening via podcast, you can always send us an email afterward. But we are live right now, so I'm Greg Nibbler, your host, and to my right,
I'm Brad Burke.
And direct from Berlin, as of what, 2 days ago?
Yeah, 2 days ago.
2 days ago, he just got back?
Smith. Yep.
Matt Smith. So, yeah, that was, what, were you there for a week?
Yep.
In Berlin?
For a week.
Wow.
Just
nice.
chilling out, wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, no work, no, nothing at all. Just relaxing.
The sights.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good for you. That was a nice, well-deserved vacation that you had over there.
Yes.
I'm sure it was. All right, so the PlayStation meeting happened today. So, over the last, we've probably talked about it several times just on this show alone about what PlayStation was going to be doing. The rumor was that it was going to be the PlayStation Neo. That was going to be the name of it when it came out, probably later this year. However, that is not the name they went with, surprisingly, but they had a couple of things they announced today. So let's get to the first one, and it has to do with the PlayStation Slim, which we kind of already knew about, that was going to be coming, but...
More than kind of. It was like... wasn't just a leak. This was like... People had like full videos of them, like 2 weeks ahead of time, just like handling it, like, look at this, look at this, look at this. I don't know if Sony like tried at all to like... I'm very curious what the like press relations plan there was.
Right. Let's just go ahead and leave this on a bench and then see who picks that up.
Yeah. They just like sort of threw them out in parking lots.
Well, yeah, they were saying it was like retailers were sort of like breaking their own rules and selling them, which I think means that like we should see Slims in stores like tomorrow. Like these things are going to be out there already. But yeah, there are people like, well, I bought this on eBay and don't tell anybody.
But they're not Slims, are they?
No.
There's this PlayStation 4.
Just PlayStation 4. So that's the whole thing. There's not really anything different other than it's slimmer. Is that correct? That's pretty much it. So this is all PlayStation 4s? Okay, yeah. Clarify that for me,
quite.
maybe.
So
okay.
It is slimmer, and they are doing HDR.
Okay.
On the PlayStation 4 now. So it's kind of like the Xbox One S was. Which, by the way, the Xbox One S, if you go look it up, it's the Xbox One. So again, this is actually like pretty common. That's actually a PlayStation 4, and not PlayStation 4 Slim.
Okay.
And the pricing, is the same pretty much, $300, which I think that's exactly what the PS4s were running for these days. Yeah.
So pretty much any PS4 coming out though is going to be the Slim from now on. Named the Slim, but that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, it's good to be the new design.
And then some older ones are getting HDR support. They said up to like the 2013 PlayStation.
Yeah, there's going to be rolling out software update for that. So that's nice. That's a nice extra.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the announcement about that. The Slim becomes the regular PS4, and so going forward, so HDR support. Other than that, anything else?
September 15th.
15th is when those start rolling out.
Yeah.
Okay, and anything else different about it compared to what the current version of the PS4 is?
Not that I can recall right now. I mean,
just visually it looks a little bit slimmer.
It's a smaller version. They're saying 30% smaller. It's probably going to run a little cooler and quieter than the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Generally,
that's about
the usual updates.
Okay, so it's just an update to what they had before. But the big one was what we were kind of speculating was going to be happening later this year, which was we'd heard the name Neo being tossed around as that's what it was going to be called, which was supposed to be the big update, like a whole new system. And what they announced today was not the PlayStation Neo, but in its place, the PlayStation Pro, which to me is a much less exciting name than Neo.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Really, just gonna go with Pro because that's not exciting. Doesn't make it exciting.
We were talking about that a little bit. This is before the podcast. PlayStation Pro seems like it's like, okay, so this is the one. I guess if you really want to like go pro esports gamer, you have to get the PlayStation Pro.
Right.
You don't want to be an amateur.
Yeah.
You've got to get the PlayStation Pro.
Yeah.
It just seems like someone like liked Apple naming conventions from a couple years ago and was
The new
Pro
PS4.
Yeah.
man.
yeah, just throw Pro after it. But whatever. I mean, not a big deal. Yeah. So otherwise though, it's pretty much as we'd heard it would be. Significantly more GPU power.
Well, let's get into that, like the GPU power on this, because that's one of the things, you know, that is actually a big bonus over the other one, PlayStation Pro. And it's supposed to come out in November, right?
10th.
November 10th.
Yeah.
November 10th. So, yeah, double the graphics power of what the current
let's see.
PS4
Yes,
is.
in fact, I think it's a little bit more than double.
More than double. Okay. So that's definitely a huge advancement over what we had before. And that's going to support, 4K, and we'll get into the VR side.
So you got 4K HDR support. Although it's still, you know, and it's not clear what the render resolution is going to be for games. Exactly. They didn't specify that, as last I saw. So I would imagine most of the games are not going to be rendering at 4K. Again, it's the same thing as with the Xbox One S.
Gotcha. So it has the ability, but it's not really going to necessarily.
Yeah, it'll probably render at some lower resolution. There was a pretty interesting leak maybe a month or two ago that was saying that it was going to be like rendering at like a 3200 by some sort of frame 3200 by 1800 resolution and then upscaling.
Okay.
That was like an option. But I think we're going to have to wait for final confirmation on that sort of stuff.
Okay, as far as that, somebody in the chat right now, Peter just said the PS4 Pro was as big as the old Xbox One. It looked pretty huge.
Yeah, I mean,
It looks pretty big.
Yeah,
We were actually just talking about that too. We were looking to see whether or not Sony had released exact size specifications, and they haven't.
They haven't. So just by appearance, though, it looks like it's pretty big.
Yeah.
That's from what we know so far. Okay, so what else other than this? What else is new? What's big in this for this, you know, supposedly huge update that they were going to be doing?
Well, we're also going to see, you know, supposedly advanced VR support. And
Yeah.
sort of the trade-off there is that when you're looking at the PSVR headset, it doesn't have a very high resolution. It's only a 1080p resolution headset. So there's sort of a limit there to how much you can really improve that fidelity. But we are going to see things like probably better anti-aliasing, higher resolution textures, and still supporting that 90 frame per second mandatory VR frame rate. Because that's sort of the trick, is like making sure that you can run the headset at the proper frame rate, you know, instead of, a lot of times they sort of hit texture qualities and sort of forgive a little bit of a dip and get that like 20 frame per second, and they say, well, it looks really nice, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But on VR, you don't have any wiggle room for that. It's really got to stay.
Right, it's got to stay high.
Yeah, it's got to stay high and consistent the whole time.
What's the minimum for VR?
It's 90 frames per second
90?
right now is sort of the where people say
That's
it
the
needs
standard.
to be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the Rift and the Vive.
They stay at 90. And so they're saying this will hit that?
Well, it should. I mean,
Should
the
hit that?
current PS4 can hit 90 frames per second on the VR headset.
Gotcha.
But it's, I don't know, like having played it a couple times, the render quality is not always really sharp.
Yeah.
A lot of times you can really tell that this thing is not running even at PlayStation 4 on a TV, you know, texture qualities and anti-aliasing and things like that. Tends to be a little jaggedy.
So in theory, with double the graphics power, this should handle that.
It should be a lot
Readily.
sharper.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Before we get into the VR, like anything else that you've seen with the announcement with this PlayStation Pro?
Well, one thing that was interesting is that they are not going to have Ultra HD Blu-ray on the PlayStation Pro
That's interesting.
or the Slim.
Why? Why do you think that is, that they wouldn't support that? Because, I mean,
I
that's
don't
half the
know.
reason, you know, when you get a PlayStation Pro, that takes over or a PlayStation or
I mean, they'll
whatever
have
gaming system,
so
it takes over
They'll
everything
have
for
Blu-ray,
you.
but they're not going to have.
The Ultra HD.
So it's not going to support 4K like the Xbox One does now.
That, to me, seems like a big, you know,
yeah.
issue.
And that's something they didn't talk about it in the actual conference, and it was only afterwards when people started doing the after conference questions that sort of started to come out. It's just like came out half hour ago, and it definitely seems like a miss. I don't know, like. So I don't think we said the price yet. So the PlayStation 4 Pro is going to be $400.
Okay. So it's
So-
$100 more than the other one.
That does seem like a fairly low price for it.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can think of really is that Sony decided, hey, this can't be more than $400. People are going to flip out if it is.
Yeah.
And we can't get an Ultra HD Blu-ray in there.
for that price point.
And make the money we want or any money at all. I don't know what exactly it's looking like. But I feel like they made that call to not include it and to keep the price as low as they could.
Yeah. But
So.
do you think that's going to affect sales, though? I mean, because if you're going to spend that much money on it, you're probably going to have your system for a while. Why wouldn't you want to have, that thrown in there, even if they had to do it up like $25 or something like that?
Yeah. And, I was actually talking to our AV editor, Caleb, about this a little bit before because we were talking about, the proliferation of 4K HDR TVs and whether that was, enough of a feature draw to really bring people in. And I think this is one of the things he was saying was that people don't have that right now. A lot of people don't have those 4K HDR TVs, but very soon they will. In the next 3-6 months, it's going to be something you want. And he said, if a device doesn't have 4K HDR support, you're going to look foolish for having bought it now because everyone's going to want a new TV in the next year.
Right.
And I think this is going to be sort of the same case where it's like you're going to buy this thing. One of the big selling points of the Xbox One S was the Ultra HD Blu-ray player. It was like, this is a 4K HDR Blu-ray player and people want this. It's $300. It's a good deal.
Yeah.
And this without it is sort of like you don't get that selling point. And also people they're gonna buy that cool HDR TV for their games and they're gonna discover they can't watch movies on it.
Well, and that's like the Xbox One S is at $300, and it has the Ultra HD. For $100 more, is this double graphics power really worth that? And you're giving up an Ultra HD to go with PlayStation. Like if you're just buying a system, and you don't have one, you don't have a preference on which one you go with. Like apples to apples, like what's the benefit? Really?
Well, I think this really speaks to like a fundamental difference in philosophy between Microsoft and Sony, which is Microsoft, they're still kind of going for a very broad-based approach where like Xbox One is not just a game console. It's also like an entertainment center that you're supposed to, put all your content through your Xbox One potentially. And they want to market it like that. They want people to get an Xbox One and not just play the games on it, but like they want to sell all this other content, and that's like really important to their overall strategy. I think Sony, on the other hand, since the release of these two consoles, Sony's been like, we're just going to go hard on like mainstream like gamers, people who are identified as gamers. We're going to cater to them, and that's going to be our strategy. And if that means like we just basically just want to deliver as much power as we can at a low price point.
So gaming is really
and
what
if that means getting rid of Ultra HD Blu-ray, then I can see them being like, okay, well we'll cut that because I think they would be right. Like I think the blowback from them having like a $500 model with Ultra HD probably like that would probably be the worst call than having like a $400 model without it. Just in like the eyes of like gamers,
right?
Gamers are
because they're not going to care about that.
Like they don't care about that, or maybe they don't, realize they care about that yet. And I mean, I would say probably what's going to happen is it'll run this way for like 2 years or something, and then they'll just add it.
Yeah, they'll just throw it in
the next update. Yeah. So.
But then if that's the case, then you buy it now and you don't have it, you're going to be kind of pissed off in about 6 months or something when they decide to add that into it. All right, so that's part of it. Well, let's get into the VR side of it because that is one of the big things: double the graphics power for the 4K and some more support for VR. How is that? How do you think the VR is going to work on this new system? What are your thoughts so far on it?
I mean, I think it's kind of hard to say,
until we get in
there and see, because like I said last time, I played with the PSVR and noticed that there was sort of things weren't exactly high clarity as I hoped they would be, and I think this is an opportunity for them to be able to allow developers to turn back on some of those features they had to turn off in order to reach higher frame rates than they're used to, and in some cases higher resolutions. We've seen a lot of games running at 720p or 900p, even on the PlayStation 4. That's less common than it is on the Xbox, but allowing developers to come back in and say, like, we actually do want more anti-aliasing because that really, really helps in VR get that nice clarity, and it's very demanding on systems. And especially, if it can support like higher resolutions and then downscale them, that would be super cool too. Even though I don't know that we'll see that kind of functionality.
Yeah. I think it was actually interesting because they didn't talk about VR a lot
because
at this conference, and going into it, I think everyone was kind of like, "This is the PSVR like thing," and actually
that was
it turned
the big
out
hype.
to be like pretty much like nothing in particular about PSVR other than the Pros coming out, which can power it, and so can the regular PlayStation 4 as well.
So they just turned it into kind of an ancillary.
Yeah, I mean that was an interesting choice on their point, their part. And I don't know what it suggests about, how PlayStation VR is coming along.
So maybe they're just worried it's not really going to be comparative to.
Maybe they didn't have much to show other than what they already showed at E3.
Yeah.
There was some unrelated news that there's going to be a demo disc that comes out with PSVR. It's going to include a bunch of experiences like Eve Valkyrie, which, by the way, I don't really like that game, but it's going to include some things like that on there. So, I mean, that's cool, but it's still a little unclear what you're going to be getting with PSVR. Which it was the same way when Rift and Vive came out. It was a little unclear like what you're really getting when you're making that purchase on day one.
That seems a little suspect though, that they're not hyping that up, that they're not making this more of an issue. Just like, oh yeah, we have VR too. You'll see, it'll be awesome. Like and just kind of go away with it. But,
well, one of the things that we had talked about too when they first put up pre-orders was that pre-orders went really quickly.
Yeah.
Like, all these retailers were coming out and saying, like, oh, such a fast pre-order, like these are all gone. And the question was, does that mean the demand is high or the supply is low?
Yeah.
And it could also mean that, like, hey, we just don't have that many of these things ready to ship out when they come out.
Yeah.
And so let's try and, like you're saying, like downplay this for now until we can actually start putting PSVRs in stores and stocking up on them so that people can play them. Because you don't want to be trying to sell people something based on saying this is the Pro and it's VR and it's great, and then it comes out and they're like, "Where's my headset?" Then they're sort of like, "Why did I buy this thing?" And you really don't want buyer's remorse there.
Well, I want to hear what people want to say too. If you're watching via YouTube, please put your comments in there and your questions, and we'll get to those as we go through. I mean, and it's going to be interesting to see whether this works. How do you think this compares? And we don't have to get into this too much, but there's the rumors, that Xbox will have the Scorpio, supposedly named the Scorpio, coming out next year. That's, again, rumors, supposed to be like the highest end thing that you could ever get. How does that compare to what we're seeing with this? Do you think that's, they're just trying to get this PlayStation Pro out quickly before everybody starts buying up an Xbox Scorpio? Or any ideas on that? I know it's purely speculation, but I'm just curious. Because if I were looking to buy a system right now, that's what I would be weighing, is whether to get this or to wait for the next big thing.
Well, I think to like kind of speculate on this, I think the PS4 came out and Sony immediately said, like, a couple years down the road, we're going to have to redo this just like we did with the PS3. We're going to put out a slim version, and we also may have to bump the performance on this. And I think they had an eye on that from the get-go. Like you were saying, they're really dedicated to gaming performance, and they said, like, we're going to plan ahead and try and do this. And I think Microsoft might have come a little later to that and said, like, the Xbox One is, like, it's a really good platform, and we're going to keep selling it. And now, especially now that Microsoft has been working with Rift on the controller, I think it's more and more likely that Scorpio is going to support VR, not just through an Xbox VR headset, but through the Rift. And that is a big jump in performance. It's, I think, probably a larger jump in performance than we're looking at with the Neo. I don't know, the Pro. Sorry, what it can run or what it looks like under the hood compared to cards like the RX 480 or the GTX 970. But I think it's entirely possible that it just doesn't have the gas to run a headset at a higher resolution like that and still hit those 90 frame per second marks and not look like garbage. And I think if Microsoft is really dedicated to getting that Rift on there, and I think they should be, they need a kind of a kick in the pants in order to get there, and it might just be taking longer for prices to come down because you can't sell if you want to put a 970 in a console. You've got to sell it for $500. You can't take a big hit on this generation of consoles because you don't have people buying new games. They can take a hit on the older versions on the first launch. They say, like, we're gonna break even or lose a little bit of money selling a console, and then that person's gonna buy like $600 in games over the next year. Whereas with somebody buying an Xbox One, they've got their pile of Xbox One games. Yeah. And Microsoft said, like, you don't need to buy any, they'll just be better. And it's like, well, then you can just take a loss on every console for no reason.
Right.
I don't see that happening.
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, let's get in this talking about consoles versus maybe just going with a straight up computer, building your own computer, which is I know Brad is a huge fan of. Brad, so. we've got a question here. We'll circle back to some of these questions here at the end. We'll grab a couple of those. But I mean, can a console compete? Is with this price point and what they're able to do? Is it going to start to become a better idea just to build your own computer?
I mean, I personally think it's been a better idea for quite some time to be, if you're looking for purely a gaming system. You know, if you really want something that you can like plug it in on your TV and play a game every once in a while, watch some Netflix. Paying $300 for a PS4 doesn't seem like a terrible deal. You know, you could get a small PC or a compute stick for that sort of thing, but you get more gaming capabilities. That being said, parts are getting cheaper, graphics cards are getting cheaper, processors are getting cheaper. It's easier to build than ever. Like the reasons to build a gaming PC instead of buying a console for me just continue to stack up. And the advantages like the ease of use and the 10-foot interface and all this stuff. There are lots of options that are stepping in to try and fill that void.
Yeah. So you're saying that would be the
I still think unless you really love Bloodborne or something. You know, like if you're just like the biggest
some
Bloodborne.
People do.
I don't know if you've heard, but it's sort of similar to this other game called Dark Souls, I think. Anyway, there are options out there, but there are reasons you might go with a console. But I just think, especially looking at cards we've had recently, like the RX 480 is like a $200 graphics card.
Yeah.
For $400 or $500, you've got yourself a gaming PC with tons of free games, and like you're saying, like the Xbox is this complete media center. And the PS4 is like sort of more dedicated to gaming. A computer is like everything you want it to be. It is a media center, and it's a network attached storage, and it's gaming, and it's productivity, and you can do whatever with it. The
but not an Ultra HD Blu-ray player.
I don't know. Have they done like 5-inch bays for that?
I'm not sure, but even if they did, it would be pretty pricey.
It would be, yeah.
Actually, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here because I actually think that we're going to go through the usual crisis of faith over the next 2 years in the PC gaming arena. Because, so PlayStation 4 Pro is coming out.
Yeah.
Power quoted at around, well, not quoted, but it's rumored at around 4.19 teraflop. So that's a little bit less than a Radeon RX 480. Also is believed to be running the same hardware. AMD Polaris architecture. Okay, so now the RX 480 is a pretty good video card. It can run a lot of things at 1080p.
And that's the brand new one.
Yeah. And so you get that for $400, and you can't build a PC that inexpensively with an RX 480. Can't do it. You're probably looking at 600, 700, maybe 800, depending if you want to get a good processor. So, and then you got Scorpio. I don't know how much Scorpio is going to be. Probably $400 or $500. And that's going to be somewhere in the 6 teraflops range. That's going to be faster than RX 480. That's going to be around end of next year. Then when you consider that consoles just have an advantage due to their slimmed down, their purpose-built architecture. Like the reason why a PS4 doesn't look absolutely outrageously bad, even though it's like less than half as powerful as an RX 480, is because you don't have all this other stuff you got to run alongside the operating system that's not with gaming. It's just for gaming, and that does help get some efficiencies there. So I think, with the new consoles, those games are going to look pretty nice.
Yeah. They're
going to come pretty close to what the very, very best game PCs can do. And so, it might not be the best time to build a gaming PC, at least as far as you're, trying to convince yourself to go one way or another. I think VR is kind of the only real wild card in that, but it also is not really a price equivalent wild card. I mean, you got to spend $1,000 for a good PC.
Yeah, for a VR.
To do VR.
Yeah,
and
at least as of right now.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be the usual, because this happens every time a new console comes out. Okay, this isn't anything that's
there's
new.
The backlash.
Like at least for like a year or two, there's like a backlash because the consoles look great, and people are like, oh, I've got my GTX 1080, I just spent $600 on it, and it doesn't really look that much better than the PS4 or whatever, the PS4 Pro or whatever, and but it always turns out fine. PC gaming is superior in the long run, but
I'll give you this point.
But I think we are going to go through that cycle again for sure.
Yeah.
My faith isn't shaken. But because there's one more thing that we haven't really talked about here that that some people are really interested in, and some people I think kind of scoff at, and that's frames per second. That the consoles are still targeting this 30 frames per second. People say, 30 frames per second, that's cinematic because it's much more like 28, which is what you see movies in. And people who play on PC games know that that's a totally silly argument because 60 frames per second is a much more enjoyable experience than 30. Like, it's just, if you put the two next to each other and you ask people to choose, 10 times out of 10, they're going to go, that looks so much better, it's so much smoother. And even at this 4K point, these consoles aren't going for that. Like, people have been, Call of Duty is going to run at 60 frames per second. Like, maybe at 1080p, because that's the kind of game where you're playing multiplayer and you need that, like, snappiness. But I think especially when you put that in front of a PS4 player and you say, like, here's Call of Duty, look at how great 60 frames per second is, they're going to go, like, this is awesome. And then they're like, you hand them the disc for, like, Tomb Raider, and they're like, what is this? Why is it so choppy? That's only going to set an unrealistically high standard that people are going to be. They're already saying they think they have it. And I don't think they do. I don't think that most games for this PS4 Neo are going to run. The PS4 Pro are going to run.
I know it's hard to get used to saying.
Second. Neo is cooler. It's a cooler
Neo's
game.
a way better name. We've established that. They definitely messed up on that part, regardless of anything else. But okay, so you think still that the PC? I mean, I guess you would be able to keep up faster. You can upgrade it, very quickly.
Yeah, and we were kind of talking about this before, that I think the optimum route to go is just for Sony and Microsoft to both sell like their console, and it's just a cheap PC that has like a 10-foot interface when you boot it up. So it's like you still come home, your Xbox, and you plug it in, and it boots up Xbox, and you play your game, and that's fine. And then if you're like, I want to do a little more here, I can jump to the classic Windows 10 desktop. I can install an app. I can play Steam. That would be, and it's a computer. It's a more versatile thing, and these things are so close already that I guess I just don't see like why you don't just give it that little more functionality and just make it a computer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for that.
Oh yeah,
but it would make sense if you could somehow get Steam to work with that. That would be a great advantage.
The whole upgrade cycle thing is interesting too, because we were saying one of the reasons why people like PC a lot is because you can upgrade the video card and then you're good to go and do that every few years. Well, now we're doing the same upgrade cycle thing with the consoles. And so I guess the question is, if you're going to do an upgrade cycle every 3 years, you're going to spend $400 on the new console. PS4 Pro is $400. You spent that much when the PS4 came out, the original one.
Yeah.
Well, heck, you just spent $800 then on consoles.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe your gap is even less than it was before as far as the price difference goes. Maybe you could have spent $800 on a gaming PC in the first place.
And just had everything
and then
that you wanted.
a few $100s more later on a new video card. You would have been golden. So.
And one of the things there that people always forget about is that games are expensive. And that, if you are buying a new PS4 when it comes out, and then you're buying the PS4 Neo, and then, the PS5 comes out another 2 or 3 years down the road, and you've got to buy a whole new set of games. I've had my Steam account for like 8 years, and I've been playing the same games across 10 different computers and across a bunch of different systems. I still pick up and play Minecraft. Like I don't need to like rebuy those games every time. I don't have to.
I've bought Minecraft like 4 times.
I bought Minecraft a few
I'm
times.
sorry, Minecraft is still the most boring game ever created.
That's wrong. That's factually incorrect.
That is an absolute truth.
Next close to the metal.
All right,
we're arguing about Minecraft.
We're gonna have to set the room on fire. Just shut this down. Just shut it down now.
Burn it all. Burn it. All right. Well, any last questions that people have here, just to circle back and kind of get some of these. Mr. Else John says that annoyed that the PS4 Pro doesn't have 4K Blu-ray. I think that's going to be a big issue for a lot of people. I mean, I'm considering getting a new console, and that's kind of an issue.
It's definitely
build
gonna
a
be
PC.
It's definitely going to be a reason that people are going to hold off. Like for Scorpio now, I could definitely that being like be the reason. I mean, the power
just wait
increase,
another year, and
the power increase is kind of like more like in the nether. It's like it's going to be more powerful. We don't know by how much. Blah blah blah. Maybe I don't want to wait a year for that. But if it's like the PS4 Pro cannot do 4K Ultra HD, that's like a pretty tangible thing. You either want that or you don't. And if you do, well. You might as well wait now.
Yeah, you might as well hold off and get that one. Okay, just kind of taking a look here. So, but the latest graphic cards are the same amount as getting a console. Yeah, that's kind of what we were going through there as far as whether it's better to build a computer. Brad is pro building your own. Matt is playing the other side.
I can understand why you would get a console, especially at this point in the cycle. I think it makes more sense now than it did like a year ago.
I'm waiting for the NX.
And it probably will make sense. Well,
there's the NX too, but that's a
No,
whole,
that's
whole nother.
Okay. But it'll probably won't make sense to get consoles like the next 2 years, maybe 3 years. They'll be pretty sensible, but
yeah.
I think.
But right now, would you say hold off? Like, what would you say about this? The PlayStation Pro. Is it worth, if you're buying like a system, you're not trying to upgrade, you're just going in, is it worth getting a PlayStation? Like, you don't care whether it's PlayStation or Xbox. Is it worth getting this system or holding off for Scorpio?
If you don't have any console, then, I think getting a PS4 Pro is fine. That's a good choice.
Yeah.
If you do have a console, then I think you definitely are going to want to wait until Scorpio comes out.
Yeah. Wait that extra year and see what they have.
Yeah,
see
because
what they come with.
Because then, you can see how much more powerful it is. You can get something that's got both the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray and the power, And by then, if you are like one of the people who has a PS4 right now, then also you would like potentially be getting like an entire new game ecosystem.
Yeah.
If you just hold off and you get that Scorpio later. So
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that it kind of depends, too. Like, are you a console player or are you a PlayStation player or an Xbox player?
Yeah,
because I think
sure.
there are a lot of
Yeah,
people who are like,
that's true.
I play Halo, or like, I play Destiny a lot, and I went straight from PS3 to PS4. Like, there wasn't even like, well, maybe I should get an Xbox One. It was like, I need my games, I need my stuff
This
here.
is what I want.
And, and it does make sense, too. Like, if you're just like, you're not a person who likes Halo and you're just not going to buy an Xbox, and you are upgrading, you get to keep all your games, which I think is a really nice thing, that you can buy that PS4 Pro, and now you've got all your games. You don't have to like go out and rebuy Destiny and Tomb Raider and Deus Ex, and like, cool, I spent $60 on that game a week ago, and now
it's
I got my Pro version so I can play it in 4K. Like, that was a really good move on their part, just to say games are going to enable that.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else final that you want to add to this? As we wrap up, any more last comments on the PlayStation Pro other than it's a dumb name, which we've covered?
Yeah, I'm still really skeptical about PSVR.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it, as far as it actually being something that's not awful.
Yeah, I'd really like to see it with this kind of performance and see how it compares to the last time I saw it, which was pretty underwhelming.
Okay, so that's kind of the big question mark with it is the VR and where it's going to go. So this system does come out November 10th, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
November 10th for the PS Pro, and then the PS Slim, which is now the PS4, starts, I think, orders, the end of this month?
15th. September
15th. So about a week away for that. All right. So we do the show close to the metal. We're going to wrap up for today every week. Wednesdays, usually we do it at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're a little bit later today because of some other events that were going on today. And we love to hear back from people. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email podcast@digitaltrends.com, or always comment on the YouTube video if you're watching via YouTube, and let us know what you think. We'll try to get back to you. Thoughts, comments, however it is. We always want to hear from you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Tomorrow, we do have our show Trends with Benefits, which is live here on YouTube and digitaltrends.com at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, so you can tune in for that. It's kind of a more broad range of a bunch of different topics. And as usual, the website has all the information you're going to want if you want to find out more about the PlayStation meeting and then Apple events and everything else that's going on today. Just hit digitaltrends.com and you can check it all out right there. So thanks so much. Back next week with another episode.